Tusen takk, Nikita. Today I will speak English, so my new friends in One Click can follow through the presentation. But yes, my name is Nora Holand and I work at FutureBuilt. And today I will talk about the FutureBuilt ZERO method and why it is important for us to own our own LCA calculation method. Because we use carbon emissions as a strategy, as a management tool in our projects, showing that change is possible when you take this integrated in your projects. So first, what is FutureBuilt? So FutureBuilt is an innovation program and a showcase for the most ambitious building projects in Norway. Our vision is to demonstrate that attractive and sustainable zero-emission cities are possible. And our goal is to realize 100 pilot projects, both neighborhoods and individual buildings, that go beyond the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement. And this by cutting emissions at least 50% beyond current regulations and common practice. So our pilot projects, they are very diverse. They include office building, kindergartens, schools, housings, and cultural institutions. And we support both new construction and transformation projects. And right now we have about 85 pilot projects in our portfolio. Some are done operating, and a lot is now during construction and planning. And to understand FutureBuilt context, we have to look how global goals flow into local action. Because there's so many people out there working for change, but there's a huge gap between how the Sustainable Development Goals actually are integrated for us. It's not always easy to see how all of this can affect you and me and everyone working in the building industry. And we cannot wait any longer for the Norwegian Building Code to take action. So FutureBuilt translates these global goals or obligations into the Norwegian Building Code. And we do this by developing criteria sets. In total, we have 11 criteria sets, all derived from the Paris Agreement and the Nature Deal. Some are mandatory, like innovation, social sustainability, and climate. And some are supplementary, like circular buildings, biodiversity, plus energy or plastic reduction. But all of the projects has to work with our climate criteria set, the FutureBuilt ZERO method. And it addresses three main areas. It's B for buildings, it's 0T for transportation and green mobility, and 0O for område in Norwegian, or districts and neighborhoods in English. So the main goal in FutureBuilt ZERO looks quite easy or easy to understand, cut emissions by 50%. And I'll come back to this 50% goal though, because even though it looks quite clear, this is quite complex. It's a sliding scale, it differs from building typology, and yeah, a lot of research is behind this. But all of the projects needs to cut emissions from our four key areas, from the construction phase, from operational energy use, building materials, and transportation during operation. During a calculation period of 50 years. So to succeed, good decisions must be made early. And our projects, they need really good data, also as we have heard a lot about today, not just to calculate the final product or the final building, but they need an information tool. So we actually can make good decisions. And also a user interface for making good, so the decision makers actually can choose the climate-friendly options. So the data is the key, and this is also where One Click comes in. So a bit about what is FutureBuilt ZERO, because it's many things. It's a strategy, it's carbon budget, and it's a method. So first, as a strategy, FutureBuilt ZERO supports the building industry as a key factor in meeting the Paris Agreement. Our sector must take responsibility for its own emissions. And here you can see the reduction roadmap or the path to net zero. The Paris Agreement says, as probably all of you know, that we have to cut emissions by 50% in 2030 and 90 to 95% in 2050 from current practice. And you see the current practice here is at 100% in year 2020. This current practice is then projected with the targets in the Paris Agreement, shown in the orange line up there, also sometimes called by us the Paris curve, because the current practice targets translated through the Paris curve. Yeah, it's easier to just say the Paris curve. So FutureBuilt pilots, they must go even further, 50% below the Paris curve, shown with the yellow line. So this is actually the FutureBuilt ZERO benchmark, the maximum value of CO2 per square meters, depending on the completion year and the building type. And we have 13 different benchmark for the 13 different building types or categories. So as a carbon budget, so that was the strategy, the budget. Each dot here is representing a building project, and each pilot must deliver carbon footprint calculations in 3 phases, as designed, as built, and after 2 years of operation. And as you see, well, this is a mix of all of these 3 calculation types. But as you see, everyone has had the same goal. They want to go below the yellow line. Some succeed, some still working on reduction. But we can definitely say that we are learning valuable things. It is harder. Can I take the pointer? Okay. So it is obviously harder for a listed building with cultural heritage connected to waste-based district heating. As you can see, the first red dot there. It's much harder to reach the benchmark than for if you look at the light blue green dot down here. And for this one, which is a mass timber construction with its own ground source heating system. But the shared trend is clear. The more actively a project uses carbon calculations as a management tool, from early phase throughout the operation, the better the results. And as you can see here, and this is a bit more about the 50% goal, as you can see, the Paris curve and the FutureBuilt curve, they are not linear. So the 50% target is an ever-tightening target. So 50% reduction only refers to like the current practice, if you see in 2020, and then it's a sliding scale. So this means actually in 2030, we are aiming for 75% reduction compared to levels in 2020. But always 50% below the Paris curve. So that was the strategy, the carbon budget, and now the method. So since we are trying to develop and join in helping the projects, building the lowest carbon building projects in Norway, it's crucial that our method is consistent and comparable. So FutureBuilt ZERO is based on the Norwegian standard NS3720, And in this figure, you can see all the stages and the scopes, including in an NS37 calculation. Some of us have talked about tekberegning today, the Norwegian building code calculation. It's shown here with the red box. It only includes some building parts and some stages, and it does not define anything about maximum levels. It's only a calculation. So, like FutureBuilt ZERO is aiming for a wide, big span. It's based on the Norwegian standard, but in the standard, you can make different choices. For example, you can choose to use Norwegian electricity mix or European, and all of these choices that is not defined, that makes very unpredictable results for us. So therefore, we have predetermined some of the openness in the standard. And also on the right, you see some additional choices, some methodological choices in ZERO. So ZERO includes a dynamic LCA, meaning it accounts for when emissions occur. So we have time weighing, we have technology development, carbonization of cement, biogenic carbon uptake, and also potential for future reusability, and also a 50-50 allocation of district heating when it's based on waste handling. So we need our own method to control all of these parameters so we can learn from the pilots and compare them and identify the right path towards net zero. So these methodological choices, they are not necessarily more expensive or more complicated, like time weighing is just simply an adjustment. So the main challenge here is the expanded scope. But of course, we really want to know the whole history of the building. So, of course, we want to include like ground and foundations and HVAC systems in our calculations, because that gives a real impression of the building's footprint. For more information, you can go to our website and read the criteria in the text. Or you can also soon go in one click and a lot will be fixed for you. So why this matters? Well, ambitious innovation projects must present honest numbers on real emissions. When our projects use innovation to reach the goals in the Paris Agreement, we need to make sure and we need to know if the innovation is taking us where we want. And this is supported by data. We need to have control of the data to be able to compare pilot projects and learn from each other. If the innovation in the projects, for example, gives really good results in material emissions, but energy use is way too high, this is highly valuable information for us. And we work really hard also to try to avoid hidden emissions. We rapidly increase the scope as soon as the industry is able to calculate new building parts, and we can make reference values, divide them by 2, and make the 50% targeting on that part of the building too. Yes, ambitious pilots need strong tools. So FutureBuilt is an innovation program, not a certification system, and nor a tool producer. So we are totally dependent on good data and therefore software developers, so our projects can cut emissions efficiently within natural workflow. So we are very eager to say that One Click and LCA, One Click LCA and FutureBuilt are collaborating, developing a ZERO-B module in One Click. And I was very glad to hear that it will be available for every license in One Click. So also that non-FutureBuilt project, they can go in and have a look and see if how am I doing next to what we say will be like the right path to the Paris Agreement. So this is very essential in all our projects. So towards the end, I will show some demonstrators of data to action. This is Magasinparken Primary School, Secondary School. It is in Nordre Follo municipality. It features a strong PV setup, a mass timber construction, and a ground source heating system. This was the project I ran over there and showed the dot. Yeah. And they even chose not to build a basement because the LCA showed that it would increase emissions. So good choices was taken like from the whole early stage throughout the design process. It's a great example of a project reducing emissions by more than 50%. And all of this 50%, like it's from the Paris curve, not reference buildings. Yes, so we're very, very proud of this project. And this, yes, this is a rendering of Phoenix, a pilot in Bergen owned by Friedenbø Real Estate. So this is a private project. The last one was a public. They are aiming for 100% circularity due to our circularity criteria. And this means they are easily reaching the material budget in FutureBuilt ZERO. By reusing all of the concrete and searching for reused materials in a wide span, and they also have a lot of overstock windows, they are lighting a fire under the reused market in Bergen. They have a seawater-based heat pump and are actually quite low on heating demand, so their FutureBuilt ZERO calculation looks really good. And here you can see, the next pilot is Nedre Sem barn in Asker municipality. And here an old barn was transformed into a new built care home using a significant amount of reused materials. It's a massive timber construction with a significant amount of reused materials, as I said. And they are also supported by a ground source heating system. And as a result, they achieved a very comfortable margin on 0B. And that made a very interesting story because this project also worked with our plastic reduction criteria. So they could, because they had this margin and had some flexibility in their project, when already the emissions were quite low, they could actually afford to install cast iron pipes in parts of their building instead of using plastic. And cast iron has higher carbon footprint than plastic, so in-project evaluations enabled by good data and real-time feedback allowed them to meet both the FutureBuilt ZERO criteria and reduced the plastic in the building by more than 50%. A strong example of reuse, plastic reduction, and good LCA management. Okay, so pilot projects are really fun, inspiring, and you learn a bucket load. Pilot projects are like drivers for change, and it should be fun doing carbon footprint calculation, and also it should be fun to do a 0B calculation. So I really look forward to test it in One Click when it's released. Thanks for listening.